SciTech Nutrition. Premium quality products. State-of-the-art look. Uncompromised ingredient quality. Our products work and taste good. www.scitechnutrition.com.
Rise with a child. You are the legend. I mean, Flexatron.
Inside the RX Muscle Studios in Westbury, New York for a special episode of Iron Debate on rxmuscle.com, brought to you by SciTech Nutrition tonight, scitechonline.com. Sadiq Faruqi, glad you can join us for this episode featuring the man they call Flexatron. But first, we're going to bring in the man they call the Technician, joining us from Portland, Maine, Chris Aceto. Chris, you heard the news earlier in the day. Tiger Woods stepping away indefinitely from golf. He said to TMZ, "I now suck, so I need to step away." Is that something that we were joking around about earlier? That's not something you said to Shawn, did you?
No, I said about Tiger. No, I didn't say it to Shawn. Tiger's problem is the minute he gave up banging all the chicks, his game went downhill. You can go back and like make a direct 100% correlation or connection between the minute he stopped seeing all the hookers on the road. I don't know. He had a chemical issue with his brain where he can't concentrate on his game like he used to be able to, because he went from invincible to showing cracks in his game. It's kind of like Phil. Phil was supposedly invincible, but he's showing cracks.
So that's the theory behind Chris Aceto's, or at least the theory why Tiger is on the decline, that he doesn't have all those women around him. Well, we now bring in the guest of the night, the man they call Flexatron, Shawn Rhoden, an IFBB bodybuilding pro, joining us from Marina Del Rey, California. Shawn, how you doing tonight?
I am doing well.
You look comfortable now. Reclining
it's so
on a
great
couch.
to listen to Chris. Only Chris could come up with that analogy.
Now, Shawn, this is your first time joining Iron Debate, and I know you can't directly see me right now as far as what I'm about to show to the audience, but Johnny, our producer, if you could bring it back here in studio, what we want to show the audience is that while Shawn may be making his Iron Debate debut, he has been with us in studio pretty much throughout the entire time the studio has been around. If we could see behind me here, you see the rxmuscle.com backdrop. Well, what a lot of people didn't know, or what they're about to find out right now, that right there, the silhouette, is that of our friend Shawn Rhoden. So, Shawn, your silhouette has graced the walls of rxmuscle.com, of our studio, really since its inception. So it's an honor to have you in there. So again, you can see that is Shawn, that is his face, and those are his biceps. And it is great to have Shawn joining us tonight. We now welcome in the boss, Dave Palumbo. Dave, for you in particular, it's a great thing to be able to have Shawn Rhoden on the show. When we talked about, the arrangements and really everything that has gone on in this industry, which has allowed some of these athletes to now be on our show, to be interviewed by us. But above all else, you look at Shawn as a competitor, as an athlete, and for you, a real treat to be able to have him on the show tonight.
Well, it's nice to be able to talk to him officially on the record as opposed to unofficially off the record, which has been the case for the last number of years while he was under exclusive contract with, whoever he happened to be under contract with. I want to make a statement about Tiger Woods. Chris, is it true that you and the only true guru, George Farah, are now vying for who will be coaching Tiger Woods in the future?
No, I heard Farah is doing a diet for Tiger's gardener.
Oh.
And then that's the way he works in, he's going to have the gardener, once he gets in shape, introduce him to Tiger.
I also heard a rumor that
and then he's going to say, look what I did for his putt. Look what I did.
I thought he was going to. I also heard he was taking over for Brian Williams on the nightly news. Is that true?
No, he's singing backup according to our last show. Backup singing with Brian Williams for who?
That's
Britney
Arthur
Spears.
Ray. Yeah, that's Arthur Ray.
Again, if you want to join in on the conversation, there's going to be a lot to be discussed here tonight. But if you have any questions for Shawn Rhoden, you're in luck. You'll have a chance to ask Flexatron any questions you want. Later in the show, you can join us on the Muscle Central Forum on rxmuscle.com, or you can tweet your question using hashtag RxDebate. And with that, we will begin tonight's Iron Debate. The first question for Shawn Rhoden. Shawn, right now, many will say you are the number 3 bodybuilder on the planet. And when we talk about the bodybuilding division, the conversation seemingly always begins and ends with Phil Heath and Kai Greene. So now here's the question. Is Shawn Rhoden still a threat, a viable threat to dethrone Phil Heath and Kai Greene from that perch of number 1 and number 2?
Well, I've been called a lot of stuff, so, being called a number 3 bodybuilder at present, seemed to be a good spot to be in. I've been told I was a one-hit wonder, not a threat, too old. At one point I was too fat a couple weeks before the Olympia, so, being the position that I'm in right now, it kind of take the spotlight off me so I could just focus on training. That being said, I think the race is a lot closer than people actually think. And for the true bodybuilding fans that's out there that have an opportunity to actually watch this past Olympia, I think that speaks a lot for itself.
So, Shawn, again, you mentioned all the reasons why you're confident about your chances of being able to knock Phil Heath and Kai Greene off their perch. The whispers now have been age, and it's an unfair criticism, but it is one that is brought up at age 39. Do you see age as any factor in this game?
I think I'm just reaching my prime. People forget I took 7 years off from the sport where I didn't even set foot in the gym. So, I still feel as if I have another 7 years to add on to the end when everybody call it the end for me. So, I'm just enjoying myself right now. And age is but a couple of numbers people throw together in reference to bodybuilding. Most bodybuilders doesn't reach their prime until age 35. So, I still feel as if I have a few years until I'm actually at my prime. I'm just starting to get my feet wet. I've been a pro since 2009. First pro show was 2010. First Olympia was 2011, which was my 3rd pro show. So to be in the position that I'm at right now, I'm just getting started.
Chris, we're going to go over to you now with the same set of questions. Do you view Shawn Rhoden as a threat to dethrone Phil Heath and Kai Greene from that upper echelon of the bodybuilding division?
Yes. What else do you need to know? I wouldn't be wearing this. Shawn, I'm wearing, you see that shirt? I'm wearing your Flexatron shirt. People think I'm wearing it, for the show, but I wear it 365 days a year. I take it off the night before the Olympia. No, listen. Here's the truth. And I've been saying it to Dave on these pre-shows, and Shawn will be Mr. the way he is. He'll listen on his end, and he won't say anything. He'll be humble. But I've been saying that Shawn decisively wins the front double bicep.
Well, wait, Chris, can you maybe take a step or two back so we could see the Flexatron shirt?
There it is, right there. You see it?
Look at that. Oh, look, he was not joking. That is official right there. Please proceed.
I got the Flexatron bobblehead over here too on the. So, listen. Shawn wins the front double bicep, period. You know, he wins it. He wins the ab shot. He wins the side tricep. His gut's not hanging out. His condition is arguably this year better than everyone's. You know what? You can summarize it this way. Can Shawn win the Mr. Olympia? Yes. If you watch the wrap-up video of Jay Cutler, Dennis James, and Flex Wheeler on Flex Online after the prejudging this year, it's called the heat of the moment. These guys were like excited teenagers. They could not shut their mouths about Shawn Rhoden. And that means the feel for the prejudging this year was that Shawn could have won that show. And so I'm sure I'm sure George Farrar is listening, and, all Phil's fans are listening, but that's a fact. And, you can't say that Kai is invincible. We've already seen this year that he's prone to disaster. His waist is wider, his pecs are flatter. He has a hard time peaking for the Olympia every year. And Phil, while I've always said is an absolutely fabulous bodybuilder, and I still stand by that, he wasn't fabulous this year. Based on his track record, most likely he'll be fabulous again. But, if recent performances are any indication of what he might look like this year, he might come in again the same way he did at prejudging this year. His waist was wider. He didn't have deep muscle separation. He certainly didn't dominate much of anything other than the most muscular.
Well, Chris, let's bring it back to Shawn real quick.
It goes back to, wait. This is an important show. It goes back to, who do you look at first and last in the prejudging? Meaning, the first call out this year was decisively Phil, Kai, and Shawn, without Dennis Wolf, I might add. And when they went through their quarter turns and their shots, I would say the condition of Shawn, the balance of Shawn, the lack of gut hanging over his trunks of Shawn, would at least put him in extreme solid running for first place. And I don't think anyone would have, or very few people would have, had Shawn won, had a problem with him winning.
So
that's my shtick on Shawn.
So let's go back to the question that we asked Shawn. Do you see age, not just with Shawn, but in general, as a factor, and is that anything that can really dictate how he should be perceived, say, for the Olympia 2015 in the next few years? Chris, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Say that again?
Yeah, again, the question was, is age a factor as you evaluate Shawn's
it's only a factor if you're getting worse every year. And if your body's beat up. I mean, for Branch Warren, it's obviously a factor because he's got tears and this and that. In other words, for Dexter, it's not a factor. For Shawn, it's not a factor because they don't have the injuries. So injuries play a role. As Shawn said, I think his point was this, that people might not have got. He took 7 years off. He doesn't have, his body's not beat down and has fatigue of training for 20 years, continuous that other people might have. So, that's the same. I think Ben Pekulski wouldn't shut up about that fact last year. I think he was out saying that Shawn was too old, and I think Shawn blew that concept out of the water the minute he came on stage this year. And I'll say this too: no one's competed as a pro more than Shawn in the last 3 years. No one. So if age was a factor, then you would have seen him. Oh yeah, that was a show Shawn got ninth at. That was a show Shawn came in off at.
So let's bring it back to Shawn. Shawn, I want to put you on the spotlight here. Obviously, you're very confident about what you've done over the last few years, given the 7-year layoff and your performance at the Olympia. Chris, very high praise of what you've been able to do, stay injury-free, and the fact that you are entering your prime. So the question is this: can Shawn Rhoden win the 2015 Olympia, and why?
I'm gonna go with the scorecards. And at the end of the day, I've always told myself this, and I've told Chris this. The one thing that I can be assured of is that I would bring the best possible package on stage that day, and then I'm going to leave it up to the judges. I'm not a judge, therefore I'm not sure what they're looking for, but I know each year we're able to make improvement from show to show. Last year, Olympia, 50th anniversary of Joe Weider, in my opinion, I thought I brought the best package. And I left it at that. I smile and wave and I say thank you. As an athlete, as a competitor, the competitive fire, the competitive juice, that keeps flowing after prejudging, after the finals. We still have to hold our composure, and thank the judges for, whatever decision they made and move on, call it a day and on to the next show. But in my heart, I know exactly where my placement should have been. And that's what keep me going. That's what keep me motivated.
Dave, I'm going to bring you in on the last word for this topic. Do you view Shawn Rhoden as a viable threat, a non-threat? And is he someone that can knock Phil Heath or Kai Greene off that perch of the high echelon of the bodybuilding division?
Well, I think, first of all, we got to address the fact that Kai is actually older than Shawn, despite what Kai may say. So age is obviously not a factor when you're comparing Shawn to Kai. If anything, we talked about this on Ask Dave earlier, I find that the bigger bodybuilders tend to have more problems as they get older because things don't, flow as nicely. And I think Kai is having symmetry issues as he gets older. The midsection's looking thicker as opposed to some of the other body parts. And he's kind of almost, it's a reminiscent look of Ronnie Coleman toward the end of his career, where he's getting a little too thick at the midsection. Whereas Shawn kind of reminds me more of a Flex Wheeler, a Dexter Jackson. He's got his waist looks like it hasn't gotten any bigger. Maybe it's gotten smaller, if anything, and his physique is still improving, as he pointed out. So I think that he will be more dominant, more of a challenge to Phil Heath than Kai Greene is moving forward in the next couple of years. If Phil Heath comes off again, I don't think that the judges are going to reward that look anymore. I think the fact that Shawn was in that top three, and a lot of people thought that he might have actually won this Olympia, is going to go a long way towards next year. If he comes in better than he was this year, and Kai is off as he usually is at the Olympia, and Phil is just not peaking his body the way he's been doing it the last couple of years, I think Shawn has a very good chance of winning. So, and the truth of the matter is that we really need to talk about Dennis Wolf in this mix too, because Wolf can also certainly pass Kai and possibly or Phil Heath as well. So you might be looking at a future lineup, Flexatron Rhoden versus Dennis Wolf for the Olympia title. I think that Phil has got some problems with his physique, and I think that while it was so dominant the last couple of years, it may not be so easy moving forward. And so, to answer the question, is age an issue? In Shawn's case, I think he's got at least another good 5 years in him.
Well, Dave, I'll put you on the spot as well on this one. Can Shawn Rhoden win the 2015 Olympia?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. You're watching Iron Debate on rxmuscle.com. If you want to join in on the conversation or if you have any questions for Shawn, we will have a full Q&A after the debate topics. You can tweet your questions or thoughts using hashtag RxDebate, or you can join in the conversation on the Muscle Central Forum on rxmuscle.com. If you're not already a member, it is free to register. So now we are going to bring the conversation back to the 2014 Olympia and talk about the winner, Phil Heath. Should he have won? Chris, we're going to go back over to you for this one. Should Phil Heath have been crowned 2014 Olympia champion, and why?
Let me break it down this way. He should have beaten Kai Greene. And the reason he should have beaten Kai Greene is because Kai's body does not have the flow that it needs to look like it looks like, let's say, in the gym. The point is, if you see Kai Greene in the gym doing a photo shoot, I would go in and say, there's no one who's going to beat this guy because there's so much muscle there. But that's why they have a stage in little itty-bitty colored underwear that guys have to put on and stand next to other guys so that you can draw contrasts. That said, so, that puts him outside. I don't think he should have beaten Phil. And I think that an interesting last call-out would have been Phil versus Shawn. And I think if Shawn gets that opportunity, a single call-out, Phil versus Shawn will beat him. That said, I think that Phil was good enough to hang on to his title this year. I could have seen Shawn winning. I just thought that Phil had left the door open enough to allow Shawn to pull ahead of him. But I'm okay with Phil winning. He's got impressive shots. He's got an impressive physique. He was better for the night show, but not radically better. So, but I think where he will have trouble or could have trouble if he looks the same way he did this year is the elephant in the room is his waist is kind of wide now. The front double the looks like an H rather than a V. The front lat spread looks like kind of awkward. The side shots are tremendous. I love the side chest. I love the side tricep. I think his back double is great. That's where he probably pulls ahead, and his most muscular is really impressive. So, I can't pick on Phil. I wish I could because I think he's a better bodybuilder than Kai is. That's why I pulled in Kai into the answer. So, did he deserve to win? Yeah, he did enough to win. I just think that compared to, let's say, 2 years back, he's not the same bodybuilder. 2 years ago, I think it was 2000, the first year he won, the second year he won, the bodybuilder that was on stage last year was not the same bodybuilder. Anyone who wants to argue it different is just a nut hugger or just delirious. So the danger for Phil coming in this year is to look like he did this year. If he looks like he did this year and Shawn comes in the exact same, not even any improvements, which he will improve because I know what he looks like now, Shawn will beat him.
Shawn, let's bring you in on this conversation. Do you think Phil Heath deserved the 2014 Olympia crown, and why? Shawn, do you hear us?
And loud and clear.
So again, did you think Phil was a deserving 2014 Olympia champ?
Phil left the door open for a lot of people to observe exactly the direction his physique is going in. And I've told Chris this, me and Chris talked about this a while back, that the opportunity to stand next to Phil, not next to Kai, next to Phil, compare us, the aesthetics, the symmetry, so forth, and to judge us accordingly, to see our flaws or difference in what makes us who we are. I think this Olympia, everyone got an eyeful of what was on stage. Does Phil deserve to win? As the reigning Mr. Olympia going in, we were always told in order to beat the champ, you got to knock the champ out. We did see his weakness. Everyone saw what he looks like. And I said yes. I'm going to say yes. I need that motivation for this year. And again, as the reigning Mr. Olympia, you have to knock the champ out. And I want to win the Olympia, yes, but I want to win that Olympia, whereas walking out, first call out by myself, everyone could see, oh crap, there's no chance of anyone beating me. So yes, Phil does deserve to win the Olympia last year because he was knocked out.
Well, let me.
He was pushed in a corner. He knows it. He was against the rope. You could see it in his eyes. But he wasn't knocked out. He might have been knocked out and knocked to the ground, picked himself back up, went to his room, screaming, shouting pride a little bit to Hani, and came back and fight a good fight, and he deserved to win.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the point of having to knock out the champ, because I think that was really one of the underlying themes that people left Las Vegas with from that weekend. What Chris just
Can I say something real quick?
Sure, absolutely.
I was watching today. They're doing this story in the 25th anniversary of the Buster Douglas-Mike Tyson fight.
Ah, yes.
I saw that.
And, you saw Tyson, floor Douglas, but he got up and he was like, I'm going to go for him in this night round. And he showed up. He showed up in the night round. He knocked him out in the 10th. He became the champion. That might have been his only championship, but he became the champion that moment. In order for someone to win the Olympia this year, it has to be a similar situation. I sit there watching that, and I was motivated because at that moment I was thinking the same thing right now. That's what needs to happen at the Olympia. Phil needs to be knocked out, count out, stayed out.
Well,
You need to be standing on the side going, I can't believe this happened, and that didn't happen last year.
Well, let me bring something that Chris mentioned, because it's a very intriguing point, and I want to see if you agree. If Phil does not improve one iota from what he brought in 2014 going into the 2015 Olympia, and you come in exactly the same, forget about the improvements that Chris is referring to, you bring the exact same package that you brought last year, Phil brings the exact same package that he brought last year to next year, do you beat him?
There's no way he's going to win.
So
There's no way he's going to win. There's no way twice he could show up the same way and win. Because everybody already saw that. So, coming to the fight again with the same fighting style, it's going to be like, we saw this fight before. If I should have looked in the way I did, I knew leaving Vegas, that was the lasting impression in everyone that was there because, again, I said at the press conference, thank you all for inviting us to the Kai and Phil show. Because that's what everybody went to see. Just so happened, we did our homework, showed up, and it was like, oh, shit, Shawn is here. So everybody knew what I brought. So if you brought the same thing again, nobody's going to be looking at him. But we never bring the same package to every show. We always seem to make improvement one way or another, even if the shows a week apart.
Let's bring Dave in on this. Dave, both bringing up very compelling points, so I'm going to bring this to you as well. Should Phil Heath have won the 2014 Olympia, and why?
The day after the show, I was at the City Athletic Club gym, and I saw Phil Heath there. He was doing a photo shoot for Flex magazine, and I was staring at awe, and he looked so good. He looked so much better, and I even told him, I said, Phil, you look like no one would have beat you if you would have looked like this at the show. And he's like, yeah, and he gave me the old, I don't know, something went wrong and you didn't feel good or whatever. Now, I don't know if, as we get a little older, sometimes the body doesn't respond like it does when you're younger. I don't know if Phil necessarily has a good formula for himself anymore. You got to remember, he competes once a year. The last 2 years, he hasn't really been at his best. Obviously, as Mr. Olympia, as Shawn pointed out, you got to knock the champ out to take over the title. And I saw Haney show up a couple of years. He was off. Doreen wasn't his best a couple of years. Phil wasn't terrible at the show. Obviously, if he comes in off again, it's not going to bode well for him. But Phil still obviously has something in the tank. Whether he just doesn't have the right formula or whatever he's doing is not working for his body anymore, that's something that he's going to have to come to grips with. And it's a scary proposition because when you're Mr. Olympia and you got to start changing your game, and I don't want to make the analogy necessarily to Tiger Woods, but you remember Tiger Woods has changed his swing a couple of times and because he couldn't, for some reason his game just wasn't as good. I don't know if Phil's in that stage where he's going to have to try to change his game a little bit to figure out how he can come in better. The problem is he really doesn't have any warm-up shows to do this at. So, he might be vulnerable next year because of the fact that he realizes that something's got to be done differently. If he comes in way off, which is always a possibility when you start making changes, and Shawn comes in that much better, it could be a game changer. the question, though, we were talking about is, did Phil deserve to win this past Olympia? I think the question is, I think the answer to the question is yes. I think he deserved this past Olympia. But having said that, I think he showed vulnerability. And I think this is the first time we've seen Phil show vulnerability to other guys. And that next year is going to be a big, come into play, because I don't think Phil's going to come in as the Mr. Invincible, Mr. Olympia anymore. It's going to come in like, well, who could beat this guy? And that's a very different mindset for the judges to have in their mind. And like I think Shawn pointed out, everyone's going to be scrutinizing him a lot more.
We are going to step aside. When we return, we are going to go in on Kai Greene. Is his 2014 filled with antics, a lot of odd occurrences? Is that going to affect his 2015 performance? That and the future of the bodybuilding industry. Then you get to ask your questions for Shawn Rhoden. You can get your questions in now. Tweet using hashtag RxDebate, or you can join the discussion thread on the Muscle Central forum on rxmuscle.com. We'll be right back.
SciTech Nutrition. Premium quality products. State-of-the-art look. Uncompromised ingredient quality. Our products work and taste good. www.scitechnutrition.com.
Back here on Iron Debate on rxmuscle.com. Sadiq Faruqi, glad you can join us on this special episode. We are joined by the man they call Flexatron, Shawn Rhoden. We're going to move on now to our next topic of debate, and that is Kai Greene. We've discussed Phil Heath, and as Shawn joked about at the end of the 2014 Olympia, him and many other competitors said, "Thank you for the invitation to the Phil and Kai show in Vegas." Well, that figures to maybe going away for 2015, but let's talk about Kai. So, Chris, we're going to bring you back in on this. Kai Greene, first of all, when you think back to his year, you think back to the on-stage antics at the Olympia, you think about him withdrawing from the EVLS Prague, rumors that he was sick, and then rumors that he just didn't want to compete. What do you make of the late-year antics, and do you see that affecting his performance in 2015 in any way?
What do I think of his late year antics? It's ridiculous. I mean, I guess what is the question? That's pretty vague. Here's what we know. He went to the prejudging. He had to have thought he won. And the reason I say that is because after prejudging, I was in this small little boutique hotel, and his main man was telling everyone he won, that it wasn't even close. So clearly he was not, quote, sick in prejudging if, one, you see him eating next to you 10 feet away 2 hours before prejudging, me and Johnny Styles carving up on 400,000 carbs. If you're sick, you can't eat 19 cups of rice at a sitting. So that negates that idea that he could be sick. 2, after prejudging, your, quote, camp comes over to me and Johnny and says, "This is the best Kai's ever looked, and he's winning the show." To which my response is, you need a lobotomy, because he was so far off. 3, pulling out. I mean, why did he pull out? Was there ever an official statement why he pulled out of the show? I mean, shit. People late for traffic and can't even make an athletes meeting, and they can't do the show. He pulls out of the show. That's my answer. I mean, it's like, was there that's my question on Iron Debate. Was there ever a official reason why Kai Greene pulled out of the show? And then, if he was sick, he's at the hockey game eating a hot dog within 15 hours later. Maybe Dave would know. He knows all the scuttlebutt. Why did he pull out of the show? What was the reason? What did Ron Norman say?
I don't know. I personally think that his mindset was very disturbed after the Olympia. Obviously, there was those clash they had on stage between him and Phil Heath, and I think when he got to Prague, look, you always know as a bodybuilder when you're not your best. You could have people cheerleading you on the side, telling you you're going to win and this and that. That doesn't matter. You know when you're not your best, and I really believe that Kai's head was so screwed up. It reminds me of the Roberto Duran Sugar Ray Leonard fight when Roberto Duran just quit and said no mas, no more.
A lot of boxing analogies
and he left
tonight.
because you know what? Roberto could have continued. He wasn't getting beaten up by any means. He was being embarrassed, I think, because he didn't feel mentally right. But that's kind of what happened to Kai. Kai didn't do terrible. He was in the middle in the first call-out, whether we agreed with him being there or not. He probably wouldn't have placed any worse than third. He had to have dropped out because he mentally just couldn't handle the pressure anymore. Will that affect his performance come this year? I think it might. I think it's going to be in the back of his head at every show he competes at.
Shawn, I want to bring you into this conversation because, again, the lasting memory for Kai Greene's 2014, and especially when you think about the Olympia and his on-stage antics getting in the face of Phil Heath. You as a competitor, what did you make of that moment?
To be honest, after the press conference, everybody was kind of rolled up and, it was like a boxing match. So when that whole thing started on the stage, in the back of my mind, I was like, fight. I'm like, hey, you know what? You guys been, talking up a good fight all day, for the past 2 days. Just get it over with right here, Just get it over. Someone get laid out, and let's continue the show. Because, we're professional athletes. We're supposed to carry ourselves in a professional manner. And, the 50th anniversary of Joe Weider Olympia, we have our two athletes on the stage about to fight. So, knowing me, I'm always in the chill mode, and I'm like, if these guys could just throw one punch, it'd be good for me. I'm like, hey, fight, but at the end of the day, I'm like, that's one thing Flexatron told me when I turned pro. At the end of the day, no matter what's going on, you gotta let shit roll off your back. You gotta grow a thick skin. So I try not to let anything faze me, but at this one, I wanted someone to throw at least, a elbow.
Well, Shawn, again, the conversation now goes to 2015. When you think about Kai Greene's 2014, you think about the onstage antics at the Olympia and what we just discussed with him withdrawing in Prague. Knowing what you know about Kai Greene and which stage he's at in his career, everything that just happened, do you see that having any effect on his 2015 performance and placings?
I'm going to be honest with this comment. I'm hoping it doesn't. And the reason why I'm saying this is I remember in 2012 when, we worked our magic and, did our homework and came in at their best and took third at the Olympia. The most disappointing thing for me was hearing everybody was saying, oh, this guy was off, that guy was off. And that kind of pissed me off because I'm like, I worked my ass off to get in this third spot. So, this year, I'm hoping, everybody bring the A game and we all go out there and, being judged accordingly because, I'm determined to be number 14. And I don't want anyone to say, well, Kai was off or Kai's being penalized or, whatever it is. And everybody come out and see us at our best, the best athlete, the best bodybuilders in the world at their best, being on stage, or the best package they could bring that day. Let's put it that way. And you just go out there and be judged accordingly. I'm confident in the improvement that we make in this off season, and I'm determined to step out there and, I told Chris if no one want to give it to me, I'm just going to take it. I'm going to take it and run. Plain and simple. So I hope it doesn't have any effect on him. As an athlete, I wouldn't have pulled out for sure after showing up and everything else that was going on. I looked at it. I've done, 16, 17 shows since 2012. There are shows that I'm like, hey, I should have won, but I didn't pull out after prejudging and be like, hey, you know what? it's not going my favorite today. So, hey, Chris, let's, what can we say? I have a cramp? Just go out there and, you're going to get beat one day, one way or another. You pulling out just because you don't want to be beat or whatever the case may be, or, you were sick. The same way you make it through prejudging, pull yourself together and make it through the final. I mean, I've seen in the past bodybuilder that were cramping up in stage and got dragged off stage, and they were fight tooth and nail just to get back on for the finals.
Well, Dave, I want to bring you in on this. Again, the conversation has gone from what Kai Greene did on the stage at the 2014 Olympia to withdrawing in Prague. Shawn obviously is hoping that this will not affect his 2015 performances. I want to ask you flat out, with the way that 2014 ended for Kai Greene, do you see it having any bearing on his 2015 performances and his placings?
I think if he waits all the way to the Olympia again, which he might do, I think it might have some bearing, because I think that it's way too much pressure. It's like waiting a whole year. It's like, how like when you're mad at someone, like it's always best if you call the person up and you get it out already and you tell them how you feel and you clear the air. It's like you can sleep better at night. I think Kai waiting all the way till next Olympia is a long way to go, and that's going to really mess with his head. If I were him, I'd almost, I probably would have recommended that he do maybe the New York Pro, or maybe a show where he can reestablish himself and get himself a little momentum. He hasn't won a show in a bunch of years now. Just feel good about himself and know that he can nail his conditioning and peak his body. Because like every year, your body is a little different. So will it screw him? I think he's going to have some problems in 2015. I think people in the back of their head, because I'm a Kai Greene fan too. We all want to see Kai show up at his best and win the big show. I mean, that we're all rooting for that. But you know what? Kai is just, he, like I said, he's 40 years old now, or he's going to be 40. His head is not where it was, I think, when he was younger. There's a lot of pressure on him because he has never won an Olympia, and I think that that's what people expect at this point. And I think that, unless he does something to deal with this stress, it could just get worse. And we could see a worse Kai Greene at the Olympia. He's never peaked for the Olympia yet. And that says a lot for, precedence. What you do usually the year before is what happens the year after. And when you never can peak for one particular show, I have to believe it's not his body, but it's his mind.
You're watching Iron Debate on RxMuscle.com, brought to you tonight by SciTech Nutrition. You can visit them at SciTechNutrition.com. Special episode of Iron Debate with Shawn Flexatron Rhoden. If you want to ask Shawn any questions, you can join us on the discussion thread in the Muscle Central Forum on RxMuscle.com, or you can tweet your questions using hashtag RxDebate. So we've talked Phil Heath, we've talked Kai Greene, and obviously we talked about the top end of the bodybuilding division, but now we're going to talk more about the sport in general. Why? Because our guest tonight is no longer a endorsed athlete of AMI Weider, and this is a trend now in this industry. Many athletes who had media contracts, and obviously we've talked at length about the muscular development athletes, the flex athletes. A lot of these athletes no longer have these contracts. Shawn, you yourself, arguably the number 3 bodybuilder in the world, when you don't have a media endorsement contract, what does that say for the bodybuilding industry and the future that really signals? Are tough times coming in for the industry, in your opinion?
Well, my case is a little bit different. I can't really go into too much detail about because there's some ongoing legal stuff that's going on. But my case is a little bit different as far as not being a Weider athlete anymore. But due to certain circumstances, you could say I was kind of pointing out, because of previous monsters or certain things that was unethical that was going on, and end up having to path ways with Weider, AMI, but You looked at the industry, you do see a lot of changes along with the supplement contract also. It's not as it was in the past. I don't think, I think the sport is good. You have so much more division being offered in the sport now that it's kind of spread thin when it comes to, 280 pounds bodybuilder looking for the contract that was back in the days. So overall, I think the business might be, going the direction you have more guys, the physique guys that, walk around a little bit more, that the shirts off, and, that could be a little bit more mainstream. And, you're looking at paying a top athlete, a large sum of money, and you have certain athletes that's willing to, I don't want to say not knowing their worth, but just willing to take whatever and settle. And so I think that affects the sport somewhat.
Chris, let's bring you in on this conversation again with all these media contracts or these publications dropping their media contracts with athletes. In your opinion, does this signal a troubling time for the bodybuilding industry?
We're on very shaky ground. You can't survive. Professional bodybuilding cannot survive if professionals can't be professionals, which means be paid well. Everybody starts off bodybuilding with passion and drive and desire. Very few people start off with the idea of, I'm going to bodybuild and I'm going to get checks and put them in the bank from bodybuilding. They start off, wanting to get bigger, wanting to improve their bodies, and it just snowballs from there. That said, there has to be some type of carrot at the end of the line where someone with outstanding genetic potential, a lot of passion, a lot of drive, can say, wow, I'm going to do the nationals this year. And in the back of his mind, he might think, I might be able to make a living at this. That latter part, I might be able to make a living at this, is important because it keeps the dream alive, it keeps his training alive, it keeps him focused, and ultimately, in many cases it should, help you see better bodybuilders, because you can't Dorian can't become Dorian and just get trophies and 10 grand. Coleman can't become Coleman and get trophies and make 40 grand a year. Jay Cutler or Phil, all these Mr. Olympia guys, even Haney, he can't train his ass off and be disciplined and sacrifice his family, his friends, his time, social life with the idea of, I'll see you at 5 o'clock when I get out of work, and we'll hit back and biceps. So the demise of publishing contracts, the seemingly demise of many supplement contracts is going to have, I think, a very negative impact on professional bodybuilding. I think it's I've thought of this all week. I know multiple bodybuilders who I work with in the last year who have lost contracts. There's no guarantees in life. It's not about guarantees. It's about trying to establish or maintain professional bodybuilding where bodybuilders like golfers, football players, basketball players make a living from the sport. When you take away the ability to make a living from the sport, you will see terrible professional bodybuilders. That's my opinion.
Shawn, let's bring you in back on this. Just given the direction in which the industry has gone, and you've seen more and more athletes have their media contracts terminated, are having difficulties finding supplement company endorsement contracts, or they become a lot more thin. And as Chris said, a lot of them are not livable upon anymore. Going forward, where do you see the money coming in from, if not from supplement companies, if not for these media contracts, do you see another source of revenue for a professional bodybuilder?
I think at the end of the day, as a professional athlete, you have to make yourself marketable for yourself and start looking at other ways and means, of earning a living. At the end of the day, yes, we all depend on, hey, I'm going to get the next big supplement contract, the next big supplement deal. But you have to market yourself in a way where outside sources, and I mean legitimate outside sources, can put you in a position to make a living. For example, social media is such a big thing now that, market yourself the right way and get, not buy followers, get the true followers, you're able to get deals from, different company just to mention their product in line. There's self-advertisement. So a lot of these, I tell a lot of these guys now that tell me that they want to be professional bodybuilder, first thing I ask is, what are you doing for yourself? Because at the end of the day, that's what it is. You have to be able to put yourself in a position to market yourself by yourself if there's no contract coming in. And, Chris knows this. The first show that we did together, my sponsor dropped me 6 weeks before the show because afraid they didn't want to pay me the bonus I was going to make at the Olympia. Let's put it that way. I get a phone call saying, hey, listen, we're going to send you some stuff, some subs, some free shirt, but we have bad news. We're going to have to release you. And in my opinion, I'm thinking, why are you even sending me stuff? You're going to have to release me. But we want to use your image. And I'm like, that doesn't really make any sense. You want to use my image for the next 90 days and pay me squat, but you don't want to sponsor me. So you have to be resourceful and say, hey, you know what? I sat down, I talked to Chris. I bought her tickets for the European tour before I even went to the Olympia, because I told myself without a sponsor, I'm still going to be a bodybuilder. I'm still going to go out there and be on the grind. So, a lot of these guys just have to put themselves in a better position. The money that they make now, stash it away in their mattress, for a rainy day, and, stop buying the fancy cars and the 500 tennis shoes and, all that crap that they don't really need, and, spend more time trying to market their image, making themselves more marketable to outside sources, to, regular sponsors. And I think that's what bodybuilding is missing is, getting the outside revenue. Why can't we have a sponsorship from Nike? Why can't we have a sponsorship from Reebok? Why can't we have a sponsorship from Smart Water? Because we're not putting ourselves in a position to be seen as that kind of athlete.
Dave, I want to bring you in on this because you, as someone who owns A, supplement company, and B, run a bodybuilding media publication, what are your thoughts when you see an athlete like Shawn Rhoden, somebody really in the upper echelon of the bodybuilding scene, get dropped from his media contract, somebody who did go a significant period of time without a supplement endorsement contract? Does this signal to you a tough incoming time for the industry?
I got 3 words for you. Why cut back? That's it. Now, you know what? Shawn made some such vital, pertinent, accurate points.
Absolutely.
That I want to just say I endorse what he said, and I think it's true. And I don't even know if he was even conscious of some of the things that he said. First of all, Chris mentioned the word publishing contracts. There's no more publishing contracts because no one's publishing anymore. The magazines are done. We've said this for 5 years now. Now it's finally come. We talked about. I live on the water in Long Island, and they've been talking about the storm that was going to wash us away, and eventually it came. 2 years ago, we got hit with the hurricane, and everyone got flooded. The flood has been coming here for the bodybuilding industry for quite a while. The magazines are done. There's no more publishing contracts. There's no more publishing, and the online magazines don't warrant publishing contracts. You know why? Because these supplement companies don't want to pay anymore, and the reason they don't want to pay anymore to the bodybuilders is because the bodybuilders are dinosaurs now. I hate to say it because I know I love bodybuilding. Chris loves bodybuilding. Bob Ciccarello loves bodybuilding. George Farrer loves bodybuilding. But the public doesn't love bodybuilding. And the people who run the organization understand that concept. And now they are embracing the men's physique division, the bikini division, as their future potential money-making, divisions. And I guarantee you, just like women's bodybuilding went the way of the dinosaur and is gone or is on the way out, so will men's bodybuilding. It's going to be turned into a sideshow, like an afterthought. And you know what? They're gonna champion mainstream America, because mainstream America likes men's physiques, and they like the bikini look. And Mrs. Jones would love to look like the bikini girl up there, and it's much more attainable for her daughter who's watching the show. And you know what? The bodybuilders are going to be, right up the because no one wants to pay them the money that they were getting before. The only people that paid them before was the magazines and the supplement companies, and now there are no magazines, and the supplement companies are so scared to put their money behind a bodybuilder for fear that they won't look mainstream enough to the social media people on Facebook and Instagram that what's happening is people are afraid to support the bodybuilding, even though the bodybuilding was the foundation of what built our industry. People weren't afraid to support bodybuilding back in the day. There'll always be bodybuilding fans. You can't be everything to everyone. That's why I think the bodybuilding should be separated from the rest of the Olympia weekend. Same thing with the Arnold weekend, because it's too much. You can't be everything to everyone. Put bodybuilding on its own weekend so that the bodybuilding fans will go there and support the event, and the sponsors won't feel like, I can't support bodybuilding because I got to try to cover the bikini. You could do both. And I think that's where we're going wrong. And I think, unfortunately, the only people that are going to be hurt are the future bodybuilders. I think Shawn is still, in his time, the next 5-6 years, he'll still be fine. But I think from 10 years from now, I don't think bodybuilding is going to be around anymore.
Chris, do you agree with that projection?
It sounds extreme, but I really meant it when I said we're on shaky ground. It's not the same. Look, Coleman, Jay, Gunter, just Wheeler, just people were making really good money. And that's not to say they didn't deserve it. And I have to say this. When you say Jay, I know who he was with before. I don't, supplement contract-wise. He's got his own line now. Coleman, who he was with. Gunter. They didn't just give him money to be fans. They made money because they were making money off him. Right? You don't go out and pay a professional bodybuilder a lot of money and go to your accountant and say, yeah, we're paying so-and-so $300K a year, and some people got a lot more than that, and have the accountant say, well, we made no money. Money's got to be pouring in. So at some point, there was a very viable reason to put a professional bodybuilder under contract and pay him monthly. There was a benefit. You don't just pay people money for nothing. And that model is going away. And, I don't know if I agree with Dave that in 5 years or 7 years, bodybuilding is going to be kaput. But at the same time, I always say Dave's right. He's usually just right early. His timing is off. So it might be 10 years.
The problem is that the supplement companies are afraid to sponsor the bodybuilders now because they're being told by the organization or shown by the organization that it's more viable to sponsor a men's physique athlete or a bikini competitor because that's what people want to see. So it's the supplement companies are afraid. I own a company and I'm always being challenged. Get a bikini person, get a men's physique person, and yeah, you need some representation, but you know what you start hearing? Well, you don't have to pay a men's physique competitor $500,000 a year like you do Phil Heath. You can get, 5 men's physique competitors and still pay less than that, and that's going to be more mainstream, and the truth of the matter is bodybuilding is never going to be mainstream. It never was. It never is. The reason why people bought the supplements that Coleman was endorsing is because they had the dream in the back of their head of putting on some muscle like Ronnie did. Now with the way the organization is gearing, the physique division, whether it be the men's physique or the bikini or or figure, they're trying to say this is the way you should look. And so why is someone going to pay a bodybuilder $500,000 a year when the organization is saying, here's our spokesperson now, the men's physique Olympia champ and the bikini champ, because that's the one who are bringing all the people into the seats, and those are the ones who are signing up for all the shows. You go to the NPC Nationals, you got 600 bikini competitors, and you only have 100 men. So, I mean, think about it. Who's putting money into the pockets of the promoters? The bikini and the men's physique. And I think that's is it a bad thing? No, because the industry still has the money. It's bad for the bodybuilder. And as a bodybuilder myself, Chris, you're a bodybuilder, Shawn's a bodybuilder, we don't like that. But the industry is still making money. It's just been reapportioned. So I think the writing is on the wall for the bodybuilder. I hate to say it.
That's going to conclude the debate portion of the show. We're now going to go to question and answers with Shawn Flexatron Rhoden. So, Shawn, we have a couple of questions coming in from our Twitter feed. This question from Devin Hicks at DEV Hicks 727. Shawn, do you think taller bodybuilders are inferior? Most contest winners and Olympians are 5'9" and shorter. What say you?
Wow, that put me in a good chance right there. I'm just right above that, 5'9" and 3/4. I think the taller bodybuilders have a little bit more frame to fill out, so it might take them a little bit longer, and with that being said, they have to pack on a little bit more size. But I think if you bring the right package, it doesn't matter how big or how tall you are, as long as that muscle look good on you.
Let's go to the next question. Shawn, if you were offered a contract to work with a supplement company, Cutler or Heath's line, which one would you choose and why?
I choose the fifth.
I
choose SciTech.
Shawn, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you signing with SciTech, what that means to you, and what opportunities that's going to open up for you now?
It means I get to open my own line on the SciTech. Just kidding, folks. Relax. The market is already saturated. I was first approached by SciTech back in 2012 at Flex Pro in LA. And I've been in contact on and off, with them since then. Signing with SciTech, actually I had a conversation with Jay a couple of weeks ago in LA, and over the past few years, I have mad respect for Jay ever since I've turned pro, because you always seem to say the right thing at the right time, and it's he's always pointing me in the right direction with just subtle little comments. When we sat down and we talked, and we talked about the state of the industry with these with the supplement company, and being saturated in the U.S. and so forth, and I had a few offers, and I wanted to take my time and not rush into a decision. SciTech, we've been going back and forth for a couple of weeks, and they gave me a call one day and said, "Hey, we want to fly you to Hungary. When can you come?" And my response is always the same: "When do you want me to come? So we can get you on the next flight." That spoke volume for me. They're very appealing because, a good friend of mine, Cedric McMillan, is with them. Give me a chance to, be a 1-2 punch at, this coming Olympia. I have a few other friends, Fuad, as well as Brandon Curry. And, even though Ben Picosa said I was too old to make any change, it's going to be great being a teammate with him. But they're the largest brand currently in Europe, and hopefully making a push to the state. Sorry. So that was very appealing for me.
So let's move on to the next question. Shawn, growing up or in the early stages of your bodybuilding career, who did you model yourself after? Who did you model your training and your overall approach after?
Yeah, growing up, I didn't want to be a bodybuilder. I'll be honest. Growing up, I saw myself as a soccer player. But throughout the years of, I was mentored by a man by the name of Mr. Yanni Schamberger. And he basically taught me everything I knew. The first bodybuilder I actually saw was Flex Wheeler. And I've always modeled and trained according to how Flex Wheeler looked, by visualizing how I wanted the muscles to look on me. So growing up, that was the image that I had in my head of what a perfect athlete should look like symmetrically. The aesthetics, everything flow evenly. I've got a knock for it over the years because, I've always been told there's nothing freaky or anything that stand out about you. And I'm like, well, look at the overall picture. When an artist is painting painting his canvas, you want everything to flow evenly, not one side bright red and the other side kind of like, what the hell is that doing over there? So growing up, looking at Flex Wheeler and, visualizing how I wanted to look, he was a big inspiration for me as a bodybuilder.
So this next question is actually for Dave and Chris, so if we can get a quick thought from the two of you. Is Shawn the closest thing to Flex Wheeler nowadays, or is it Phil Heath? Dave, we'll start with you first.
I think that he's the closest, absolutely, without a doubt. I mean, when I look at his physique, I think of Flex Wheeler back in the day, and I think that you can't help but make the comparison. It would be awesome to have been able to see the two of them on stage against each other, just to see what it would have looked like. It's the old, what would Muhammad Ali and Rocky Marciano been like if they ever got a chance to fight? But I think Shawn is the modern incarnation of Flex Wheeler. Absolutely.
Chris, what about you?
I think we lost Chris.
Chris, we still have you?
Yeah, no, I think Shawn is very comparable to Flex Wheeler. I think Shawn has actually probably more weight and more muscle, but Flex has a tiny frame and probably the smallest joints of anyone. Well, who's ever been a professional with those type muscle bellies. But I think the comparison is very comparable, and that's why the questioner asked it. I'm sure, right?
Absolutely. One more question for Shawn Flexatron Rhoden. Shawn, what is the biggest adjustment that you're making for 2015?
Well, Chris told me not to tell y'all, but
okay.
Occlusion training.
Surprise. Let's put it that way.
Muscle damage.
I could only one word I could use to describe it. Nuclear.
Nuclear.
In the words of Mr. Palumbo, when the hair stand up the back of your head.
Nuclear. That's all I could think of. Nuclear.
It's gonna be You know what, man? Every year I tell people this, and I was just asked this past weekend. What body part do you need to improve on? And in my opinion, it's always everything. You brought a package, they looked at it. You don't want to bring the same package again. But I don't go back to the drawing board saying, I'm just going to focus on my back. I train every body part like it's my weakest. Like, if this body part is weak, I need to beat the crap out of it. So, with that being said, it's going to be nuclear, right, Chris?
Yeah, Dave, Shawn you got to remember that Shawn's advantage is he trains with dummy Brad Rowe. They're both dummies. They're both bamboozled and suckered into the idea that I tell them. I say, Shawn, if you train your ass off every day and push yourself physically to the limit and push yourself mentally to the limit and don't fear nothing, and when you get tired, embrace it, then you can be Mr. Olympia. And Brad, you can be a great pro. And they okay, that's the formula.
Well, I have a question. My question for Shawn is, what kind of training do you do for your physique? And are you a guy who goes back to basics when you need to make improvements? The old squat, deadlift, bench press, bent over rows.
I found out the past couple of years I haven't done a lot of stuff that these guys have been doing all their life. And coming out to LA training with Charles Glass, and Chris has this thing. He'll text me. He goes, "I want you to go 100% today. I want you to go 90%." This is what I want you to do. Talk to Charles. So with that being said, lately, I've been lifting a little bit heavier, a lot heavier than I used to. And going back to basics, going back to, the heavy one-arm dumbbell row, the deadlifts, all that stuff, the benching, working in different grips, as far as adding more density to the muscle, dumbbell shoulder press, bent dumbbell, bench press and so forth. So I'm going back to basics, and I'm doing this stuff that I've never done, because some guy said this one time that you got to start doing the things that you've never done to get you where you've never been.
I agree.
So I'm applying that principle to this year.
You look bigger. That's why I'm asking you.
And I have this crazy dude that I train with that if people know this guy, if people know this kid, Brad Rowe is no joke. People might look at him and, might be a smaller version of what people expected, but I've never had a training partner that trained as hard as this kid does. Some days I want to tell him, hey, back it off a little bit. But he knows nothing more than going all out every day. And, when you have someone like that constantly pushing you, it makes it so much more fun, because it's like, if Brad do one plate, I want to do one plate. Brad does 2 plates, I want to do 2 plates. And we challenge each other every day. Like, he looked at me and said, "Oh man, what exercise you want to do next?" I'm like, "Hey, barbell row." He's like, "Let's do it." So we're going back to basics, and just treating everything like it's the first day in the gym. And just looking forward to this year Olympia. It's going to be a whole different look for me. The way I feel right now. The weight I'm at right now, I've never been this early in the year, and still be able to see my abs.
And this big.
So it's a good look. And once Chris said, "Hey, we want to drop a nuclear bomb in Vegas for the Olympia," I said, "Say no more."
Dave,
you already gave me the blueprint for this, so let's get at it.
Why cut back?
Sean.
Yes,
what
sir.
did I tell you? What did I tell you about the venue? What can you share with the listeners about the venue last year? I forgot I had said that to you, and you had mentioned to me 2 days before the show about. Do you remember what you said to me? And I said that.
You said you said to me, how many people hold in the arena? And I threw a number out at you, and you goes, "Really?" You're like, "Well, can you said, can you imagine?" Oh, Chris said this to me, folks. He says, "Can you imagine being the first name call out at the Olympia?" And surely enough, first call out, Steve Weinberger, Shawn Rhoden. I don't know Chris see these stuff now. How he predicts these. He's like, "Your name will be the first name call out at the Olympia." For the lineup.
Sean, let's talk really quickly about the upcoming Arnold Classic. You look at the field, Justin Compton, Dexter Jackson, Cedric McMillan, your friend Ben Pekulski, Branch Warren, Rolly Winkler. How do you see things shaking out in Ohio in about a month?
And I'm going to be a little bit biased because, it's going to be between Dexter and Cedric.
Really?
Okay.
And, I've seen, pictures of Cedric, and I've seen Dexter. And you can't take anything away from the blade. He's been at this for so long, and I don't know how he does it, how he just keep on coming and coming. Like, he might have a lot more gray hair, but he keeps just bringing that package that you have to look at. He got that old man muscle, working for him. But I talked to Cedric yesterday, and I told him, I said, "Listen, the way you're looking now, with the amount of muscle that you're carrying and the hardness that you have, and you still have 4 weeks to go, I was like, at the end of the day, it's yours to lose. But you can't take away anything from Dexter. Nothing against the other competitors, but I'm just talking from my point of view, and the guys that I know, I've seen Dexter every day, and I know what Cedric normally looks like and how he looks now. I think, the road he's on right now, you just got to keep on going and it will be his. But Dexter's right there because you can never, I realize you can never count him out. Look at Dubai, You never know. He pull a fast one and come out, looking like a beast. Same thing in Prague, So I got to tip my hat off to him and say, hey, now watch out for Dexter, but at the end of the day, I'm giving it to Cedric.
All right, very bold prediction by Shawn Flexatron Rhoden. Shawn, it's been an absolute blast having you here on Iron Debate. Do you have a message for your fans in the RX Muscle community who were so excited when we made this announcement last night that we were going to have you on the show?
Just want to say thank you guys so much for your continued support. It's good to be able to, talking here with Chris. I know we spent a lot of time on the road. Me and Chris, and we have the pleasure of having Johnny with us this past year. Try to break him in. And I've been friends with Dave for a while. It's just such an honor to have, just great, wonderful fans that, support me, even though I was with the company and, wasn't able to, give you guys a piece of my mind, let you guys know how I feel about a certain situation. Continue to follow me in social media and Instagram at Flexatron Rhoden. Same thing in Twitter and Facebook and my fan page at Shawn Flexatron Rhoden IBB Pro. You guys can also find me on the SciTech website. And the only thing I can say to you guys, the best is yet to come. Progress over perfection.
Shawn, did you really send a free package of supplements to Johnny? Was that really you that I saw?
Yes, I did. Johnny is my boy.
That was a nice box of stuff
Jay
you sent
Styles
him.
right there.
You've increased his productivity about 50% with all the stimulants you sent him.
Jay Styles is the man. Y'all don't forget that.
Wise words from a wise man. That is going to do it for this edition of Iron Debate. Special thanks to that man, Jay Styles, doing an excellent job producing the show. As always, special thanks to Chris Aceto and, of course, Shawn Flexatron Rhoden joining us for the first time. The replay is going to be available within minutes on rxmuscle.com. Reminder, tomorrow at 4:30 in the afternoon, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Heavy Muscle TV. We're going to be joined by Tracy Hess. We're working on a special guest, so if we get this guest confirmed, we will make the announcement right away. We are also going to be unveiling a new species nutrition sponsored athlete live on this show. For everyone involved, wait, what?
Is a new athlete Brad Rowe?
A new athlete,
Brad Rowe.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You've got Brad Rowe spoiled. He's asking for $500,000 a year. We couldn't come up with that.
That's my boy. I told him don't undersold himself. I'm like, know your worth, bro.
Again, Shawn, we thank you so much for joining us tonight. We look forward to having you on future episodes. That's going to do it for Iron Debate. Have a good night.
Peace.